Back in 2016, I owned a hostel in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, and this was the biggest mistake that I ever made in my life. Hello, my name's Richard John Curry, and today I'm going to talk about owning a hostel in Southeast Asia and why it's not as easy as people think. Back in 2016, I was living and working in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. I used to be a filmmaker in the Cambodian film industry, but in 2016, I was unemployed. A very good friend of mine called Hamish from Australia, he actually owned 50% of a hostel in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. That hostel was called the Welcoming Backpackers. The other 50% share was owned by two Western men. Now in 2016, they decided that they wanted to sell their share in the Welcoming Backpackers. So Hamish approached me one day and he said, "Would you like to buy 50% of this hostel? It only costs $14,000. Now initially when Hamish said this to me, I said, I don't know anything about running a hostel. I don't want to do it. And he basically said, listen, you don't have to know anything. I've been running this place for 3 years. I will run the front end. You just manage the bar. He was just looking for somebody to buy the 50% share. So that evening I went home and I thought about it very carefully. Was this something that I could make work? I didn't know anything about running a hostel, but I had worked in a bar before in Phnom Penh. And I phoned up Hamish and I said, listen, how much does it cost per month to run the hostel? What are the numbers? He told me, and this scared me, that he pays $4,000 of overheads per month. That includes the rent, which was $2,000 per month, and the staff wages, the cable TV, the internet, the water and the gas. So altogether it was $4,000 per month, and that's a lot of money. But what Hamish said to me was, if we book out all the rooms and the beds in the dorm, we cover the overheads and then some. What we need to do is maximize profits at the bar. So I sort of thought to myself, is this something that I can make work? I had lots of friends in Phnom Penh and the price was only $14,000. This was an already functioning business. It wasn't moving into an old building and doing it up. This business was up and running, it was making a profit, and I didn't have a job at that point. I didn't want to live in regret. I wanted to be a man who put his flag in the stand and said, I bought a hostel in Phnom Penh. And the idea of owning a hostel in Phnom Penh, it was so exciting and it seemed like it was going to be a big adventure. So I thought about it a few more hours and then I phoned up Hamish and I said, let's do it. I said, I'll take $14,000 out the bank and I'll pay the money and I'll run the hostel with you. So within 2 weeks, the paperwork was drawn up, we signed the contracts, I took the money out the bank and I paid $14,000. And literally overnight, I owned a hostel. And when I woke up the following day, when I actually owned the hostel, I sort of thought to myself, what have I done? This could be an absolute nightmare. But I already paid the money. The contracts were signed, so I couldn't get out of it. And that began one of the craziest periods of my life. I'm sure that many people watching this video or many people who have heard the story, you probably think that running a hostel is a piece of cake. And that's what I thought before I signed the contracts. This is going to be easy. I'm the manager, I run it with Hamish. We sit back, the staff do all the work. All we have to do is sit and get drunk with the customers. But it's not that simple. Running a hostel in its most basic form is very easy. But to run a hostel that makes money every month is very challenging and it can be difficult. Now, before I bought the hostel, I thought I had a pretty good idea of what to expect every day. But what I anticipated would happen and what actually happened were two completely different things. And I was in for a rude awakening. Every single day when you run a hostel, every single day, there will be 4, 5, 6 problems to contend with, and they don't come one at a time, they come all at once, and it can be quite overwhelming. Our fridge freezer broke down one day. We had to pay to get a new one. Where does that money come from? It comes out your pocket. Then you've got staffing issues. The majority of our staff at the Welcome Backpackers, they were professional, they were diligent, they did their job properly, but you had a minority of people that made your life difficult. They turned up late, they were lazy, they weren't doing their jobs properly, and as the hostel manager, me or Hamish, we had to deal with it. But the most stressful part about running a hostel, it was dealing with customers. Every single day we had an assortment of customers coming through the door. Customers that were looking for a discount, customers that turned up late, customers that got too drunk at the bar and started being abusive to fellow customers. Sometimes backpackers steal from other backpackers, and it's very prevalent in the dorm. We had a humongous dorm upstairs that housed 10 people. You've got 10 different people from 10 different countries, all coexisting under one roof. And sometimes things get stolen. Our customers, the backpackers in the dorm, we give them a locker. But many of these backpackers, they didn't use the locker. They left their phones on the bed, they left money on the bed, they left their passport on their pillow, and it would get stolen by a fellow backpacker. And who's got to deal with it? Management, of course. It was just a nightmare every single day, dealing with all these problems. And within 2 months, I knew that I had made a humongous mistake. But I was already in it. I was chained to the hostel and there was nothing I could do. Unfortunately, my solution, whenever things got too much, whenever there was too much stress, I started drinking too much beer. As the owner of the hostel, as the bar manager, one of the perks is you get free beer. So when I first started owning and managing the hostel, I restricted my drinking to 2 or 3 days a week. And that was for the first couple of months, and everything was going well, everything was working, I felt happy, I loved working with Hamish, but that was in high season. In Cambodia, you've got high season, low season. High season, more customers, more profit. Low season, less customers, less profit. So in high season, you're making lots of money and you're super happy, but then along comes low season. What happens? Less customers, less money, and you start getting frustrated. You get frustrated, then you get angry, then there's resentment, and then there's depression. I'm a very basic individual. How do I cure my depression? I start drinking beer, and I commenced to drink lots and lots of beer. What started as 2 or 3 nights a week soon became 5 or 6. And I got drunk pretty much every day for 3 months. It was pathetic and it was pitiful, but that's what I did. That's how I dealt with the stress. And inevitably, when you're drunk, when you're hungover, it impairs your judgment. You're not able to do your job properly. There was a lot of tension between me and Hamish during this period because he was basically running the hostel and I was busy getting drunk with the customers. And I thought I was doing my job. I thought, oh, it's my job to entertain the customers and get drunk with them. But in reality, I should have been more proactive. I should have been promoting the bar. I should have went out with flyers. But instead, I just sat and got drunk. And it was just day after day, week after week, month after month, just getting drunk with the customers. And looking back on it, it was a very sad state to get in, but that's what happened. But after 8 months of running the hostel and after 2 months of drinking every day, I woke up one morning and I just said to myself, I can't do this anymore. I was so ill from drinking all this alcohol. I was bloated, I had a huge beard, my eyes were bloodshot, my tongue was a disgusting yellow colour. And I couldn't drink anymore. I couldn't do it anymore. And I knew what the problem was. The reason I was drinking was because I was depressed. Why was I depressed? Because I was running a hostel and I didn't want to do it. I didn't enjoy interacting with customers. I didn't enjoy being a bar manager anymore. And I knew that I had to cut myself loose. So the following day I went to Hamish and I just said, I can't do this anymore. I'm selling my 50% share of the business. He was shocked. He was absolutely shocked because it only been 8 months and already I'm waving the white flag and I'm saying I can't do this anymore. But he was my friend and he understood. And I said, I'm going to have to sell my 50% share to one of my friends or somebody on Facebook, which obviously scared Hamish. And he went away and he thought about it. And he had done it for almost 4 years. He'd been a hostel manager for 4 years, including the term that I joined. And a week later, he met up with me and he said, you know what, let's sell the place together. So we made the decision, we're going to sell the hostel together, and that took 2 months. And that was a very, very dark period because Hamish and I, we both decided we didn't want to do this anymore. Running the hostel made us feel depressed, we're not making a lot of money, and then let's sell the hostel, but we can't get anyone to buy the hostel. And this went on week after week, 2 months in a row, trying to sell the hostel. And there was a lot of tension between me and Hamish because we were stuck in this situation together, and you can't take it out on the customers, you can't take it out on your staff. So what we did was we started arguing, and it was a very sad situation because we were such good friends, and here we were like a married couple that wanted to get divorced, arguing and fighting every day. Eventually, after 2 long months, we found people to buy the hostel, and that was one of the greatest moments of my life, and for Hamish as well, because we knew the nightmare was almost over. So we met with the new buyers a couple of times. They made an offer. I believe they offered $35,000, and Hamish and I said, okay, let's do it. Within 2 months, the contracts were signed, the money was paid in cash, and Hamish and I were free of the hostel, which was just incredible. Such an amazing feeling because I was in hell. I was in a hole and it was filling up with beer. I was depressed every day. I was angry. I had so much resentment towards the hostel, and I was finally free and I made a profit. We sold it for $35,000. I invested $14,000. Plus I invested an additional $1,000 doing the place up. So I made a small profit, and that was us released from the hostel, and it was an incredible feeling. Many people have said to me, do you regret buying the hostel? Because I've just sat here and said it was a mistake. Buying the hostel was a mistake. But do I regret the decision? Absolutely not. First of all, I made a profit. We sold the business and I made a couple of $1,000 profit. And if you own a hostel and then you sell it within 1 year and you get your money back, you're very, very lucky. And I was fortunate to make a profit, and that made me feel very happy. Believe me, if I lost all my money, I wouldn't speak about it ever again. The second reason that I don't ever regret buying the hostel is because the experience is unlike anything that I've ever done in my life. There's nothing that I've done before or since owning the hostel that will come close to the bedlam and the chaos that I experienced every day. And yes, I was depressed almost every single day. I was drinking almost every single day. But there was happy times as well. The first couple of months, everything worked and my mates came and me and Hamish, we made a heap of money, and that made me feel very, very happy. But at the same time, like all things in life, you've got to take the good with the bad. And there was a lot of bad times, but I'm very, very proud of myself that I was able to pull myself through the problems and identify what the issues were and then sell the place. But when I look back on it, it's such a crazy experience to think that I owned a hostel in Phnom Penh. And it's not something that I would ever do again. Many people have said to me, after I sold the hostel, people said, oh, you're going to buy a bar next? And I said to my mates, there's no way in hell I would ever buy a hostel or a bar again in Cambodia, because I know what's going to happen. Before I bought the hostel the first time, there was this element of the unknown. And that's what excited me. I didn't know what was going to happen. It was unpredictable. It was an open chapter in my book. But now, 10 years later, I know what's going to happen. I'm just going to turn into an alcoholic. I'll be rude to the customers. I'll be obnoxious. And I'll be miserable. So I don't need to do it again. Well, that's the end of today's video. If you enjoy my content, don't forget to like and subscribe. And check out my book. It's called Burning Brain Cells in Cambodia, and it's all about my life in Phnom Penh from 2012 to 2019. It's available to buy on Amazon as a digital book or as a paperback. I'll put the link in the comments section. But until next time, Jim Rablia.